The Quo-Cast, a Status Quo Fan Podcast.
This is Jamie Dyer welcoming you to another edition of The Quo-Cast. And if you'd like to be a future guest on the podcast, then you can. You can email quocast@outlook.com. That's quocast@outlook.com. You can also tweet at castquo on Twitter, or you can send me a message or leave a comment on the official Facebook page, which is just called simply The Quo-Cast. So on this day, the 9th of December 1960, the British soap opera Coronation Street was broadcast for the first time. Viewers got a glimpse of the lives of Annie Walker, Ina Sharples, Elsie Tanner, Ken Barlow, for the first time on that day, and they've been fans of the show ever since. Now, you might be thinking, if you're not aware, Jamie, this is the Quo-Cast. It's a podcast about status quo. What has Coronation Street got to do with status quo? Well, as others will tell you, Quo were on the show in 2005 at a very interesting time in Quo's history, because they were celebrating a certain milestone, because certain fans will know that the milestone used to be from 1962, then it changed to 65 of the meeting between Francis and Rick rather than Francis and Alan, and of course ITV celebrating a massive milestone that year, their 50th birthday in 2005. So they were pulling out all of the stops, and Quo appeared on Corrie that year in a couple of appearances which are fondly remembered by most, including members of the band. And having looked back at it recently, it's funny, isn't it? It's just funny. It's daft, and in a roundabout way, it did lead to Bula Quo, which to some people is a good thing, some people is a bad thing. But let's focus on the positive here. So, as we say, they were celebrating that milestone. Matt Letley had also been with the band for a few years by that point. They'd released Heavy Traffic in the early 2000s, went on to obviously Riffs, and then the follow-up album to that of original material, with one of the lead singles being the title track, The Party Ain't Over Yet, written by John David. Now, it gave them one of their biggest chart successes in years, and I think it's partly because the song itself was really strong. Mike Paxman's production on it was really strong. The playing is fantastic. It's catchy. It could be used for a number of different things, and the fact that Quo appeared on Coronation Street, I think that gave it somewhat of a boost as well, and why it went to 11. And another historically significant thing in the life of Quo is that because of that chart success, they got invited onto Top of the Pops, which would end not long after that. So that was their last appearance, at which point Francis said, "Thank you, Top of the Pops." Again, a very historically significant moment for them. So I tried to ask on social media about the Corrie thing, and I didn't really get any response, and that's fine. But people liked the photo of Francis and Rick, and I think Matt Letley in the background, I think it was, and that tells me that people watched it because it was Quo. I certainly did. I wasn't really a Corrie fan. I didn't really watch it that often. My family did. I sat down to watch it, and there were a few things, really, that sprung to mind then and now. So Les Battersby as a character was always a Quo fan, and I suppose in some ways he was the stereotypical Quo fan, in the way that he dressed, in the way that he was in his manner, I guess, with the double denim as well. And they gave them a very funny story to work with. And of course, at one point, with that brilliant punching scene at the end of one of the episodes, obviously where the whole story is that Francis has got a neck brace on, and it's because Les basically assaulted him or pulled him off the stage like 30 years ago. and there's a little bit of a tussle that goes on, and he recognises Les and he punches him. He said 20 years of pain, and Rick pulls him back and he says 20 years of him moaning, and it's just hysterical. But as that is happening, Les was holding all those records, and on mainstream TV at like 7:30 at night, whatever time it was, we saw Quo albums, not just the Rockin' All Over the Years compilation album, but there were others. I think If You Can't Stand the Heat was in there. That's an amazing amount of attention to detail, and certainly a case that Quo were more than just the songs. I mean, you heard Rockin' All Over the World in there. I think you heard Whatever You Want in there at one point. And when I rewatched the episode the other day, and my wife pointed out that perhaps Quo wouldn't be listening to their own music in the van, but then again, it's not really for their benefit, is it? It's for the benefit of the audience. And imagine how many Quo fans would have loved just seeing that on mainstream television, and the subsequent performance in the following episode and all the escapades of that, and how many Quo fans it might have created, because at the end of the day, that's what this was probably designed to do. It's there for exposure. And as I say earlier, with all of the successes of the anniversaries and the single and even the album to a lesser extent, it did the job that it was supposed to. And subsequently, since the Corrie appearance has been featured in documentaries, Francis talked about it on his solo talking tour, which was interesting. I think he even played a version of the theme because he said he likes the chords in it, which was really nice. And he told a couple of funny stories about Chesney, the little boy that was in Corrie at that point. And it's interesting. And I feel quite proud, actually, that they did that, because what other band was going to do a story like that? It's kind of silly, right? But Quo, by that point, weren't really taking themselves particularly seriously. It being part of the image that had kind of come up with David Walker. And so they really were just perpetuating that image, and it was great fun. Absolutely, and very funny, and of course at Matt Letley's expense. We get he's trying to sign the jacket, and Chesney goes, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm the drummer," and he replies, "Oh, the drummer," and walks off. And you just think that's it's brilliant. There's so many in-jokes in that appearance, which is wonderful. I love the way that Jack Duckworth refers to them as the 70s lot, which is brilliant. It's brilliant. So, although I didn't get any response on social media, I've rambled long enough. I would like to ask you, what did you make of the appearance on Corrie? Was it a masterstroke? Was it a stroke of genius? Or was it a decline? Right? Was it kind of the step on the right way down to a decline? I don't think so. I think it gave them one of their biggest successes in years. I think it exposed them to potentially a whole new audience, and it gave them something else to talk about in documentaries, which is always a good thing. So many facets, and it could be billed as one of those publicity stunts up there with Rock Till You Drop and the painting auction and all that type of thing, but I don't think so. I think they were the perfect band to make such an appearance in that particular show, because it's always been known for its comedy and its humour, and it's just daft. And I, as a 15-year-old viewer that year, watching that, I finally got to see them in something cool, in something that was mainstream, something that I wouldn't really get to experience until, say, 3 years later when they appeared on a record with Scooter. But that's another story, isn't it? Well, there we are. I am going to leave you now, but I'll see you on the next episode of the Quo-Cast, and happy anniversary, 60th anniversary to Coronation Street, and thank you for taking Quo into the history of your magnificent show, and I'll say bye-bye for now. Cheers.